folks, it's Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue. And for those of you checking out the title of this vid and expecting it to be some sort of April Fool's kind of joke, I'm afraid to disappoint. I guess that's my April Fool's joke on you. But actually I am indeed going to speak in defense, I shall note, not in praise, of Rush Limbaugh. The reason why, essentially, is that Rush Limbaugh actually exemplifies the expression of free speech. And as someone who seriously believes in free speech, I realize that the necessary consequence of this is that some kind of idiotic, fat blowhard who buggers underage children while stealing Viagra prescriptions is perfectly entitled to state their opinions, no matter how retarded or offensive I find them. And I think if you really do believe in free speech, you're not interested in controlling the speech of Rush Limbaugh. Unfortunately, you have to have faith in free speech. You have to believe that at the end of this messy process, which allows complete retards to speak their mind, that the truth will out, or the more sensible position will out. And that's really hard to do. That is an enormous leap of faith. You've got to have faith that the better idea will be more persuasive, that people will be attracted to it. And that won't happen, I think, immediately a lot of the time. I think you'll have lots of blunders and stumbles along the way. Democracy and free speech along with it are exceedingly messy propositions. They don't proceed in a calm and orderly fashion, like a dictatorship. There are lots of stumbles and missteps, and it's a lot like evolution in that respect also. You know, there are lots of, branches on the evolutionary tree which go absolutely nowhere. Why? Because they were bad ideas, and, those animals or plants or whatever died out. And I even find myself kind of being put in the position of praising Fox News. Not because I think anything they say is inherently praiseworthy, but it actually stands as a rebuke to something which I no longer believe in, which is professional journalism. This whole idea that there's some way that we can distill the bias out of everything and have people give us completely unfiltered, unbiased news. Fox stands as a complete repudiation of that notion. And I think it fairly is getting increased viewership because people realize that there's a problem. And the problem is that there is no one who is helping us make the decisions that are necessary in order for our republic to continue. Right now we have this terrible model, and the way that it ends up coming out right now in terms of because of this myth of professional journalism, the end result we have at this moment is that when we are given a proposition, or we're given the sides of a proposition, basically what journalism does now is it says, the people over here say this, and the people over here say that. You decide. Unfortunately, what this doesn't do is it doesn't provide us, any help in terms of trying to figure things out. And it assumes that we have the capability, the time even, to deeply research everything that the government is involved with. Well, of course we don't. We don't have the time for that, and we don't have the expertise. That's what we have journalists for. And that's why the Founding Fathers gave huge subsidies so that papers could be delivered. If you look at the early times in the United States, the post office made almost no money off of newspapers, even though that's practically all they delivered. Why? Because the Founding Fathers realized that the sheer volume of journalistic endeavor was what was important. That they needed to support this because it is the fourth estate. It is the thing that helps us to understand government and also helps us to understand the value of various propositions that the government puts forth. And that's why I find right now this horrific tendency of papers to go under in the economic crisis to be enormously dangerous. Not because we won't have anything to say, but because we're losing the most important vanguard of our democracy, that namely being investigative journalists. And you talk about how these things go online afterwards, but staff is being cut. Staff is being cut at a staggering rate. And a lot of the people who are being cut, because they're expensive, are investigative journalists. It's expensive to mount a deep and long, investigation of some aspect of government. It takes a long time. You need to have, money to survive while you're getting the facts that are necessary to put, a deep level of analysis together. But I think the reason why this is all going under is because people realize that there's no value to what's going on right now. So Fox actually, with its aggressive partisanship, I think, is the answer. Not by itself, though. The problem right now is that Fox is out there by itself. And because it's there by itself, and it's basically drawing all the people who want help with their decision-making process, the country drifts gradually and slowly to the right. Instead, we need to have this myth, another myth of the liberal media. We need everybody to be honest about their viewpoints, about their biases. And we should just go ahead and admit that these biases exist and try to represent all of the biases equally, so that everybody is basically Fox News, aggressively partisan. This is very much like when I was growing up, and I remember in most towns there would be a Democrat and a Republican paper. Now certainly we need more points of view than just Democrat and Republican. But what we do need also is we need to get that dialogue back, where you have aggressive partisanship on both sides, on all sides of an issue. So there should be a libertarian view, there should be an anarchist view, there should be a progressive view, there should be all these views, and they should all be strongly represented so that people get an idea of all facets of the situation. And it's not Fox who basically kind of owns partisan viewpoints, because it's clearly the strongest of the things which are partisan at this point. Now you could say MSNBC or whatever has a liberal bias, but there's just nothing out there that's as strong and organized. And most of the places that are accused and maybe even have a liberal bias are still kind of playing with one hand tied behind their back. They're still trying to cling to this myth of professional journalism, to try to pretend that they have no bias, instead of just going ahead and embracing it and saying, yes, I have a bias. This is my viewpoint. This is what I support. This is what I'm after. And everything that I do is pursuant to that goal. And I think people will respond strongly to that, the same way they respond strongly to Fox News. Because here's something that's actually helping you make sense of the world. It's not just they say this, they say that. It's like these people say this, but they're on crack. And these people over here, they're actually making some sense. And that's really what we need journalism for, because we don't have the time to develop the expertise on everything. But more and more, all of this needs to be in the service of wild, open, unfettered free speech. Everybody saying exactly what they want, exactly what they mean, wholeheartedly giving their position, and not being afraid of being called partisan. We shouldn't be afraid of being called partisan. We are partisan. What we need is some help understanding what that means and finding out the best parts of each other's partisanship, which can only be brought about by intense conflict. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the matter. Happy April Fool's Day, everybody, and you can feel free to argue.